Monthly update with the Epoch team.
And
we can all just make our noises. Let's do it.
Storm Tracker, Austin Fletcher.
I don't have a noise. What's mine?
What are we doing?
We already did it.
It is.
Done. That's our intro.
Nailed it. Welcome to the Epoch Podcast, your weekly dose of mental foreplay. My name is Matt.
I'm Jen.
I'm Austin.
I'm Christina.
I'm David.
And today we're just going for it. We're hitting what we think are socially relevant topics, current events, and throwing in some good products that you can find and I don't know, buy and give us the cash for. I don't know.
Wait, that's what we're doing?
Nice.
What?
I mean, it feels like that. That's. Do I need to start over?
No, I think the goal was to give our feedback or whatever, and then link it. So
Link it.
Oh, feedback on the products, you mean?
I don't know.
Yeah, whatever. It's a
Well,
who knows how this will be episode. We're
I
just
think the goal of it was to be, so we try to record, 6 weeks out?
Mm-hmm.
And at times there are relevant things going on in the world. There are relevant things going on in our lives where it's not always necessarily about being 6 weeks out. And at times, we want to be able to share things that are going on right now, as well as change up the format a bit once in a while and just have a little fun. So whatever one this turns out to be, as far as the as far as the audience is concerned, it's a little bit different format, obviously.
Oh, sure. And it is weird when you think about going 6 weeks back. It's a month and a half ago. Like, a lot has happened since then. I mean, our content is evergreen for the most part, but today is not.
Explain for our listeners what that means, man.
Evergreen? Well, it's not an evergreen. It's evergreen, and means that it's good to go for a long time. Shouldn't time is no barrier to how valuable the utterances that we are delivering are.
So it's like an evergreen. It's always green.
That's good.
Yes, exactly.
it means you can binge.
I mean, we do live. We're in the evergreen state. So.
In this evergreen room.
Is that green?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know.
Ooh, it's magic stone, actually.
I'm colorblind, so.
It's a weird color. I don't know. It looks weird on the screen, so.
Maybe we can sell this too. If you go to where we get the paint.
Sherwin-Williams?
No, we didn't go there.
My bad.
No, but if you ask for rainy office, there you go. That's the color.
Whatever place you bought it at.
Right?
So,
Who wants to go first?
I don't want to say anything because I don't want to take Matt's host job again like I did the other week.
oh yeah.
Well, that was just rude when you did it, but now
I
it's
know,
totally
so I'm
appropriate.
trying to be quiet.
Well, how about you lead us off there?
Well, I have a couple different things.
Does anybody else have anything important? I mean,
I want to hear what Tina has to say. Go for it.
Okay, do you either want to hear about monkey brains or
are they chilled?
Well,
No,
now
okay,
I'm just curious. You don't even need to go to the next one. What are you
So,
talking about?
have you guys heard that some people in China, I guess, scientists obviously put a human gene into monkey brains? You heard about that?
No.
Okay,
What
let me
happened?
tell you. It's just a little blip here that I have. So the gene is MCPH1, which is associated with brain development and brain size, and people think potentially has to do with our intelligence, maybe key to higher intelligence in humans. So they wanted to try testing this out in monkeys for some reason. I don't know. It doesn't seem smart to me. They put it into Reese's. Oh, I never said that out loud. It sounds like Reese's Pieces.
I was like, what?
Rhesus macaques, which just sounds weird to me, but it's a kind of monkey anyway. And what they did is they put it into obviously embryos, and then they tracked, kind of the difference between those monkeys and regular ones. And basically, their brain cells develop slower, which is more like human brain development. Human brains develop slower. And the monkeys demonstrated a better memory and better reaction times than the other monkeys. Then later on, one of the scientists backtracked, saying he now thinks this kind of research shouldn't be done.
Yeah, because he watched Planet of the
I
Apes.
was like, that's exactly like Planet of the Apes.
That's what I was thinking the whole time. I'm like, oh man, this is
Okay, so one little thing like that is not going to make a huge difference. It's not going to make them more, not really going to make them more human-like. But in general, what do we think about animal testing? Is that I don't know. The more I think about animal testing, I really don't like it, honestly.
And if it delivers me the finest shampoos for my luscious hair, no, I don't.
For those who can't see, Matt is mostly bald.
We can't even see. He's always wearing a hat.
I guess the secret's out.
Oh.
He looks good.
No, he's
Whoa,
not.
whoa.
Whoa!
Got like the
whoa,
Chuck
whoa.
Liddell thing going on.
Right.
Dude.
Back when it comes to animal testing, like I just think of like all those videos that you might see on social media where it's like these animals are seeing sunlight for the first time and they're coming out, and it's like Sarah McLachlan starts singing in the background, and you're like, what are we doing to the world? And that's how I feel about animal testing.
Okay, so we're probably on the same page about it.
I think my first thought is here as we're enhancing monkeys, potentially enhancing them, if not causing them tons of problems, is like, we think about that Planet of the Apes scenario, but realistically, like artificial intelligence, like if you project that out a little bit, 10 years, like how much more of a problem that could be, instead of just making a monkey more human-esque.
You could join us in the fight to
Yes.
win over the AI.
That's like the
That's
fifth
like the third
sequel.
one?
Yeah.
So
I mean, the point of it, I was just going to say the point of it was basically because they want to try to test different brain functions in a more closely related way to human brains. That's basically all. Okay, so what were you going to say?
I was going to say the problem to me is that science keeps confusing human consciousness with the brain.
Yeah.
And they don't realize obviously some of them do. I'm not going to say they're all stupid. I'm just saying that they've kind of centered it on, and science still kind of has this mechanical approach to organic systems.
Oh, totally.
It's kind of this, like the same way you work on your car. Like, well, if firing a piston, just take out the piston and replace it. Whatever. Like, it's the human and organic systems in general, but especially the human system and especially the human mind. It is not, a cog. This cog's bad, let's just replace it. It is an entirely different type of system. And so, when you consider intelligence and all they're doing is working on the brain, what are they doing with the intuition? What are they doing with the emotions? What are they, and we probably should. I had a very long conversation with a couple programmers, very high-level programmers, about artificial intelligence that was kind of mind-blowing for me, which would be an interesting to jump off of this. But just in general, human consciousness, when you just focus on the brain, I think you fall woefully short. Yeah, you can get things like memory, because that's the brain is where a lot of memory is stored, and you might even be able to get certain improvements in neurofunction. But emotion and intuition and art and creativity, like that doesn't just come from the brain,
Right.
right? So it'd be interesting to talk to one of those scientists and say, okay, what are you guys trying to accomplish?
Well, I think what they were actually wanting to do more was relating to like diseases like Alzheimer's and those kinds of things. I think they're interested to see if they could get more insight into those kinds of things with monkeys that are more potentially adapted.
I was just saying, I think it just reminds me of that quote. I think it's a quote from Jurassic Park. Like, scientists became so obsessed about whether they could, they didn't think about whether they should.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, has science been able to quantify where emotions resides and where feelings and are they still trying to figure out, well, that comes from this part of the brain and that part of the heart, or I don't know. Or
I will say that, ancient science, the meridians, in your body, acupuncturists have acupuncture based on the meridian lines in your body, in that there is enough study and evidence to kind of prove that different emotions come from different organs. If you're not familiar with the emotion code, that should probably be one of the links on this particular episode. The emotion code, there's a book, and then it links in even to the body code. It's still largely considered psychology, so mental science, or more for most people, it would still be spirituality. But it is starting to become more scientific, the study of emotions, where they reside, where they come from. And they're realizing that every one of your organs has certain components that they previously simply relegated to your mind. And that even your spleen or your liver or whatever, they have certain functions beyond just the mechanical function that has previously been thought. But that science is still very young, and right now you have to be willing to be a pariah in the scientific community to kind of go into those areas. But quantum physics is starting to blur those lines a bit. So,
well, that's where you get like the saying of follow your gut, or think about your gut.
Well, specifically, I mean, your gut impacts so much, though, too. I mean, it reminds me of what Austin was saying earlier, about how sometimes we treat the human body like it's a machine, and if you sub out parts, it's going to act just like a machine would. In reality, it's we're not even just a single organism. We're should be classified as a superorganism, in that there are billions of other things living inside us. Like, we are a human community as an individual here. It's not just me, Matt. It's me, Matt, consists of so much bacteria. I mean, like, my gut is another brain essentially. And so when people, for an example, being like, if you eat a lot of sugar and you have cravings for sugar, those cravings are coming from your gut, because there's bacteria in your gut that are like, they live off of that sugar. And so when that sugar is not there, they send the signal that tells you eat sugar. And that, to me, is so wild, of how much impact bacteria in our gut could have. But I mean, that's an emerging science, though, too.
I read about a study that they did on women that were in menopause or something like that, and that they I don't remember, they made them watch these sad videos. I don't know, some sort of whatever.
Lifetime. They made them watch Lifetime.
Or Hallmark, but they had two groups. The control group and then another. One of the groups got yogurt.
Activia
for gut health. The other group didn't. And actually, the ladies that had healthy guts had better. They were in better moods than than the ladies without.
Oh, better moods, like they didn't cry, or?
Well, they like it. The sad stuff didn't affect them as much. They were happier. I don't know.
Interesting.
But what they said is like, it was significant enough that they could make a conclusion from it. But the ladies that had the healthier guts felt better in general.
I mean, I definitely prefer yogurt to a fecal transplant. Like, those are a thing. Like, I remember when they were saying, like, I saw like a title for an article. I'm like, doctors urging people to avoid DIY fecal transplant.
Oh my word!
All right, since you said it,
good segue to something else.
Said it there, Matt. New technologies. Let's do this.
Oh boy!
Explain fecal transplant
and why it's beneficial.
We're gonna have a link
when it's done professionally.
Sponsored content.
To truly answer the question, the idea is that some people have good communities of bacteria in them and others do not. And I mean, they've found that people could eat the same exact thing and have the same exact activity. It's in there now. Activity levels. But if they have different gut communities, they can have drastically different weights as a result.
Wow.
So
aspartame
So people have been literally bringing in communities of bacteria from other people's poop and putting it in their butts and waiting for the magic to happen.
But don't do that on DOI.
Like that? Does that work well?
So I don't know if it was a documentary. I saw it was a woman who had literally done anything and everything she could. She had some sort of, it was like a skin, almost like boils and stuff, like just could not, and it was killing her. And she tried anything and everything she could, all the pills and all of the treatments and everything like that. And then finally she did one of these fecal transplants, and within like 3 days she was healed.
That's insane.
That is
because the bacteria in the transplant actually healed her.
So they actually did like the science to be like, you're missing this bacteria and this person has that bacteria. It wasn't just like this random luck of the draw.
Yeah, that's a good point.
No, I mean, it was definitely professional, medical. It wasn't just some like, I shoved somebody else's poo up my butt. Like it was.
This person's healthy.
It was intentional, and it was still experimental, but
right. We're gonna give you a poo enema. Like, yeah, what?
It actually has stuff to do with allergies and stuff like that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at the same time, I think they were urging people to avoid the DIY ones because it can go horribly wrong.
I mean, you would
right?
think, yeah, maybe.
I mean, think about it.
Let's not.
We're not endorsing that.
Let's not go there. Never mind.
Are there any other technologies we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, I guess I just want to go back to consciousness, right?
Okay.
So, like anybody who has ever experienced pain knows that your whole body is available for that physical experience of pain, whether it is sick to your stomach, whether your heart aches, whether you're, your whole body can just get sore and achy. And I mean, that is all the evidence I need that consciousness and in human intelligence is way bigger than the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then on top of that, I just had to add, you are not your mind. Right? People think they are their mind. But in reality is you can watch your thoughts. If you back up one step from your thoughts that you're thinking, you can observe yourself, which is all the evidence you need that you are the observer of your mind. Mm-hmm. You are not your mind. And the problem is that when you think you are your mind, then your mind controls you. And that's I'm sure at some point we could probably do a whole episode on consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Write it down, because it is one of my favorite subjects, and it's just, I don't know, to segue into the AI, unless you guys wanted to add more on this.
I wanted to ask you a question then about that. I mean, just have you come across anything that talks about like sympathetic pain that people experience? Like, I know, for example, if I watch, having had knee problems in the past, watching a child jump onto their knees or just be rough on their knees, like my knees hurt watching them do that. Or if I, watch a kid take an object to the testicles.
Yeah. I feel like certain people are much more empathetic in that way. Yeah, prone that.
Empathetic. Yeah.
We have a friend who he would always get, I want to say he got sick when his wife was pregnant. Like he would get nauseous instead of her or something like that.
Oh.
So, yeah, I don't know.
I'll carry that water for you.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't come across anything that I would personally count as revolutionary or anything beyond just anecdotal. Again, it's anecdotal evidence because enough of us have experienced it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there is something to it. The thing is that there's so few scientific approaches to this stuff that it is still largely relegated to spiritual voodoo, or made at best psychological voodoo. And then I do agree with Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements, that modern science in many ways has left modern psychology in the dust. That psychology is still stuck with Freud and maybe Carl Jung, and hasn't really come up in many ways to the modern way of thinking about thought and thinking about and so when they want to treat somebody's depression, they go after drugs that immediately attack the brain and something, and realizing that there is just so much more going on in the human mind than what most modern psychology considers. And you get like quantum physics, where you get technology, and they are pushing the edge, and psychology stuck back 50 years ago. And so the Four Agreements and things like the Power of Now, Psyche or emotion code or body code, Dr. Joe Dispenza. There's Carolyn Leaf, who's kind of studying a little bit with the mind in a more spiritual area. Like there are a few influential or people, a few doctors, a few quote unquote credentialed individuals who are approaching the mind in a new way, but it's still so young, and it's still Dr. Joe Dispenza is probably doing him and Bruce Lipton are the two doctors, and maybe even Carolyn Leaf. They're kind of all doing their own thing a little bit, but they're all studying the mind in different ways. And I have not heard any of them do a study on that sympathetic pain or that sympathetic component, but I do know probably your best one would be Bruce Lipton and his take on the biology of belief. But the science of the mind is something that I think we will start seeing more and more of in the next 10 years, 20 years, that will hopefully get beyond Carl Jung and Freud, and that psychology and even sociology at that point will start to mature in its approach, and it will start melding with spirituality, which I think, if I could guess, that is why it has been stuck, because psychology got as far as it could go without becoming spirituality. And I think that's now quantum physics is giving doctors and scientists permission to get weird. And that weird has always been the realm of spirituality.
Yeah.
So I think that line's finally being blurred enough that you're seeing it, and it's still respectable.
I feel like there was kind of like a little bit of a swing in the pendulum from science away from religion or the quote unquote spirituality part of things, that they kind of said, no, that's the realm of religion, and religion has nothing to do with science.
Right.
That's all, superstitious or whatever. And now I think we're kind of coming back to that and saying, no, I mean, that is a part of the human in a sense. And we should study that.
And that's again a symptom of treating the human like a machine.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally.
Like I can study I can work on the tires and I can work on the engine, and they have nothing to do with each other. And realizing, no, the human experience is spiritual, it's scientific, it's philosophical, it's relational, it is physical, it is so many things all in one, and they all interact with each other. They are not separate parts of a machine that you can treat separately. And I think science is, in many ways, especially medical science, it has hit those boundaries where it is hitting stuff that it doesn't know what to do with until they start thinking with other muscles, other organic thoughts beyond the mechanistic thought of separate systems.
So tie this into our previous podcast about longevity, because it feels like a lot of that, the premise of what we had talked about was that basically what we were just talking about. I think Aubrey de Grey was saying something in regards to the human body is just, it's kind of like he related it to Model T, and just saying, hey, you can have Model T still running today as well as it did before. You just had to give it the proper maintenance as far as the physical parts of it, the engines, the pistons, bearings, et cetera. And so, like, how would you, what would we say in regards to, okay, is it not just going to be, as far as longevity has to do with it, not just going to be a thing of let's keep our body up to snuff, not keep our mind also? I mean, I kind of know the answer to this one, but yeah.
Well, I kind of think about it like, it's great to have a Model T, but if you don't have a life source in it, it's just going to sit there and do nothing. Like, it can be pristine and beautiful, but it's not useful. It's not going places. You need that person to go in and start it and drive it around and make it useful and make it go places. And so That's kind of like we have this body, but if we don't develop the spirit and the soul within it, it's not living to its fullest potential.
All you need to do is go to an insane asylum and see that there are perfectly functional bodies going nowhere.
All you need to do is just go and see a retiree.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think one of the things that comes to mind for me is I mentioned my knees earlier, how I used to have knee issues, and you can study the knee. And I'd gone to physical therapy, and I'd had a variety of doctors, military and private, public doctors, whatever. Take a look at them, prescribe things. Yet the issues persisted for about 14 years. And I love how a doctor will say, like, don't take Google's advice over my degree that I have worked years on. Your 20 minutes of Google are insufficient. However, it was Googling it that led me to realize that if I could, through diet and exercise, increase my level of growth hormone, that my knees would be able to heal themselves. And I've hit about the 1 year mark now of being maybe not pain-free, but almost doggone pain-free, and my activity level has soared. So instead of having to ice my knees if I went up and down the stairs a couple extra times in a day, I'm running stadium steps. And we just got back from a softball tournament where I was coaching with the kids, coaching with baseball, my son earlier in the weekend, like just all over the place, doing heavy, intense things with legs. I sprint daily now, and I don't have knee problems anymore because of the steps I took to increase growth hormone. So
it's almost like one doctor's degree cannot compete with 8 million doctors on Google.
Right. Well, and it's not a machine. I mean, like, yes, there's tons of valuable information you can get from looking at the knee within a vacuum. But when you understand that it's existing within an ecosystem of the human body, and that there's all these things playing within it, like it's a totally different answer that you get.
It's crazy that the whole diet thing is still, for so many doctors, they're like, no, your diet doesn't matter. Just eat McDonald's, you're fine. You're like,
I got my
knees
1 credit hour.
Right. But like, seriously, yeah. I mean, your knees hurt, and you're thinking, and your solution was change what you put in your mouth, right? And that's not at all how most modern medicine looks at it.
Right. That is, yeah. I was gonna say there wouldn't be a doctor who would just say, just eat McDonald's, you're fine.
That's true.
But
I maybe was being a little harsh.
But no. But see, you do have a point in the sense that would there be a doctor that would tie, unless they're a special doctor, tie diet to knee pain?
Knees, right?
I mean, that connection, maybe, yeah. I mean,
you might find one that's saying like you've got excess inflammation, and so we need to work on that inflammation. And I've definitely, it was a multiple pronged approach
but they would send you steroids.
Oh, sure.
Or they might say, you need to lose weight because you're overweight, so that's why you have it. But it's not going to. Not you, but in general, gosh, in general, a doctor might say that. And
for the listening audience. Anyway, sorry.
If you were to have gone to a doctor, and you might, no, you're not even. But there are, people come in with joint pain, and you're like, well, you need to lose some weight. But there's no like, try this diet, that diet. It's just diet and exercise. Do it, make it happen.
Right. But see, and then the best thing is like you're in there for like 10 minutes, and then it's like $400.
Right.
You wanted to ask the doctor a question, they just rushed out.
Well,
I don't know. I will say I have had a couple doctors that I was super pleased with.
Dr. Friedman, love you.
That's the one. He's the first one that comes to mind.
Oh, he's the only one for me. I know. I went in and had some blood work, and I was told that I had. My liver numbers were stressed, and that I don't even remember I don't think they told me anything, but we're just going to monitor it and come back and we'll see what happens. And I was like, well, that's not really helpful. So I did a Google search and found out that milk thistle helps with your liver. And so I took some milk thistle and went back, and my numbers were lower, and they're like, it's a miracle. Like, that was the enthusiasm in their voice. I'm like, it's really like I took an herb. To get my numbers down. Thanks for your support. But things like that. We're rabbit trailing.
I think it's a good episode so far.
It is.
It's not our worst.
I thought maybe it was going to be a little bit of fluff and stuff, but it's just pretty good.
Yeah.
We got into consciousness and diet for health. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
What's next,
This is
guys?
legit, this is legit podcast.
Speaking of consciousness, well, I don't know if it really has anything to do with consciousness, but it also has. It has to do with like the way that you think. I was actually reading an article about the way that your brain puts together thoughts, and that a lot of people think that it's, like as pictures or just associating things, and it's actually more like on a grid, and it's very much GPS like. In other words, that you go to certain places, and that it's on a spatial grid, and that the neurons. I wonder if where's my phone?
While you're looking for it, that reminds me of the Memory Palace. Is anybody familiar with the Memory Palace by chance?
Yes, there's a cool episode of the Sherlock Holmes show. The one with Cumberbatch. What's his first name?
Benedict.
Benedict.
Benedict. Benedict. Okay. Or Benedict.
I almost went there.
Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock Holmes.
Yes,
and
that's an amazing series.
Right, but they do. There's an episode with the guy who uses a mind palace.
Ah, right on.
Did you see it?
I'm sure I have. That's not why I remember. I remember it from a guy that was like a reporter who just went to a memory championship and was talking to one of the guys, and then took on his method and then won it the next year.
The reporter did?
The reporter won it, yeah.
I did see something about that.
And it's wild because in the beginning of that, I think it might even be a TED Talk, I'm not sure, but like in the beginning of it, he talks you through this super crazy journey. And it's like, it's on me 30 seconds, but I can still recall most of that journey that he talked about today. Like, he opened his front door and there was, fat, sweaty bikers going into his front door. Britney Spears was dancing on his coffee table, singing "Hit Me, Baby, One More Time." He followed the yellow brick road to his oven, and it's just the weirder the imagery that you create for this memory palace, the easier it is to remember things, and you create things that remind you of things. And so, the reason it reminded me of what you were talking about, David, is the memory palace. Like you're walking through it, you're going through a walk in your mind. And so to say that your thoughts are organized like via GPS, I'm like, it's taking you to different locations. That's really interesting. So.
Yeah. This is a direct quote from the article. The study has found that regions in the brain, the hippocampus and entorhinal cortex, act like a GPS. Their cells form a grid-like representation of the brain's surroundings and keep track of its location on it.
That's wild. It's just so even just the idea of thinking what is a thought? Like, how do you store a thought?
I did
in a schema. Duh, everyone knows that.
Well, I was just gonna say, it makes me wonder though, for people that don't have that visual component, how it might work differently. Because I don't have that visual component. I don't see things in my mind.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
So whenever people would go through these exercises, imagine an apple. Is your apple green? Does it have a stem? Does it, or imagine yourself on a beach. To me, imagining myself on a beach is okay, what do I know about a beach? A beach has sand. Okay, so there's sand and there's water. That's pretty much my thought process with imagine yourself on a beach. I don't see stuff. It's almost like an aftertaste of an image, maybe.
Whoa!
So
there's not an actual, huh?
How would you say that the law of attraction is working for you?
Well, see, and that's
I feel not the only tool for the law of attraction.
It does honestly feel like a disadvantage to me, and I have glimpsed, being able to see things randomly when almost asleep. All of a sudden I've had a couple instances where I'm like, oh my word, I can see things in my brain and it's so insane. And then when I told David about it one time, he was like, yeah, well, I realized most of the people can see things in their brain. And I was like, what the heck? how do you guys get anything done? Because like there would be so much. I would never be bored. That's insane to me to think that someone that can see things in their mind could be bored ever.
Well, and I think visualizing in your head is definitely like a muscle that you have to exercise, and that you have to intentionally like, okay, I'm stuck. Like, what am I going to see next, or what kind of input am I going to help me in? And that's why like guided meditations are so key, because there's someone there kind of like, okay, envision the apple. What are you doing with the apple? Where are you going with the apple? Those kind of things.
There's a difference between putting in the inputs as well, which maybe this, and that's kind of being in your imagination, and then there's going into the spirit, which would be a whole different ball of wax.
Which,
right. But I think you have to go into your imagination first to be able to get to the spirit. Like it's the first step of the journey.
And I guess my question for you, Tina, would be like, you're an artistic person who can create things.
But it's always been a struggle for me. See, that's the thing. I've always felt like I've never felt like an actual artist, because artists in my mind can create things from their mind. I have to create from research and pictures of things. Like I don't have that connection. Has never been there for me.
So and Thomas Troward would say that there's a difference between creative art and constructive art. Mm-hmm. So he would say that the true artist creates out of nothing.
Yeah.
They don't have to see anything, and they just create. And then the construction artist is no different than somebody who can build a house out of nothing. Mm-hmm. Well, you have all the materials, you're just constructing them, versus true art comes from nowhere, and you're making up out of nothing. So it is interesting when you consider creativity on those two planes. Mm-hmm. That one is kind of reframing what already is, mm-hmm. and that's largely what I do as well. I have very few original thoughts, but I reconstruct other people's thoughts really, really well. And I reconstruct other people's art really, really well. And Kat, who hasn't been on this episode or the last few, because she's got some stuff going on in her life right now, but hopefully she'll be back. I know she is an original artist where stuff comes out of her mind that isn't just reconstructing what other people have done. And that is something that I also kind of find. Christine, I don't know if I have it quote unquote as bad as you do, but I'm similar in that original creative thought and even imagination does not come super easily to me. Mm-hmm. What is that called again? I know there's a name for it.
Aphantasia or Aphantasia. They pronounce it differently, but the term has not been around super long. And a lot of people have just been finding out that they have this different connection or lack of connection in their brain. And it really screws up your head right at first when you realize that everybody else or most of the people experience life in a much different way than you.
My theory is that they're going to find that that's not actually true.
Well, the thing is, there is a guy that's been working a lot. Well, I mean, there's a couple people probably, but there's one main guy that's been working with people to try to open that up for them, because I personally do think it's just like a connection thing of some sort. I know that the capability is there because of the fact that I can dream really well, and the few times that I have glimpsed being able to see. So I know that's the capabilities there, obviously. Anyway, he's been working with people on different exercises to try to figure out ways to get them to activate that. And he's had some success. He thinks that, though, that it's more of, I think he coined the term prophantasia, possibly, which is being able to, it's almost like you see things in different places in your mind, like the difference between the mind's eye and in the front of your mind. I think he would say that the success that he's had with people has mostly been more like a prophantasia thing, which is more in the front of your mind. And I don't really know how other people experience things, but the stuff that I've seen has been, very briefly, has been very, very, very real. And then there's also hyperphantasia, which is when you almost can't distinguish between what's real and what's not, like when you're just like with your eyes open and stuff, where people are actually like projecting, I guess.
Well,
stuff.
if you're open to an experiment, I mean, the first first one might have like an issue with the post office, but I can poop in a cup and then mail that. Maybe it's a bacteria you're missing.
I mean,
or there's a supplement that I've found has a pretty powerful impact on my dream life.
a drug or a
Ayahuasca.
It's Huperzine A.
What?
It is inexpensive. It's
Link that. How do you spell that?
You said that's had an effect on your dream life?
absolutely 100%. Like, I mean, so oftentimes you combine it with alpha GPC, which is a form of choline that's able to cross the blood-brain barrier. However, you don't necessarily need to. Huperzine A just helps prevent it from breaking down once it crosses. I think once it crosses, maybe just period. But if you just take Huperzine A by itself, I think in general that's at nighttime, that tends to cause me to have some pretty or more intense dreams. So
Did I try that? one time?
I think you may
and
have.
I didn't care for it. So there's that.
True.
You didn't care for it, like it had negative effects or just nothing?
I remember waking up in the middle of the night and it just felt like I had like electricity coming from my brain to the top of my skull, and I was like, I don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
So
for what
I said no thanks.
Huperzine is coming from a club moss, like a Chinese club moss, and I don't know, like if you are somebody who wants greater focus during the day, if you combine something like alpha GPC again, or just a source of choline with Huperzine A, it'll provide you greater focus and memory retention and memory recall during the day.
I'll definitely look into that. I'm curious. I mean,
Do
I'm
we
guessing
need a
it's probably.
disclaimer here by any chance?
We are not medical doctors, so don't listen to us.
100%. Like I literally pulled this stuff from, like, I deconstructed Alpha Brain, which is a product from Onnit that Joe Rogan is ambassador for, and it can be a little pricey. And so I was like, well, what are the main things going on here? And so when I pulled that ingredient and combined it with the choline source, just based off of things that I found on Reddit. So again, not from doctors, from Reddit, from Google, it made an impact.
I'm gonna. You can record. This is being recorded. Make a timestamp.
Nope.
I'm gonna predict that in the next 10 to 20 years, they're gonna start studying the mind in a different way than they've ever studied it. And that we're going to start finding, it's no different than like DISC personality profiles or lemon leadership or all these different, Myers-Briggs, different personality things. And I think they're going to start finding that different minds work differently. And I could be wrong. And if quote unquote, Christina's mind isn't working quite right and it's quote unquote broken, I think in some ways that's kind of bullshit. I think this isn't like social justice warrior Austin coming out and being like, no, everyone's equal. Like, it's just, I think we have neglected the nuance of the mind for so long that in studies and having that mechanical kind of approach to things, we have not understood. I mean, just where is your mind? Like, where does it come from? I still really want to get into the consciousness discussion regarding AI. But just to say, like, look, Christina's mind works a certain way. I think mine is similar. And I think if they start studying the mind differently, instead of having this, because to be honest, what is the standard mind? What is the standard?
Definitely.
Right. What is the standard body? Like, when they pretend to have one, and then everything gets measured against that standard. And I think society's waking up to realizing, I think we're a lot closer to like the four houses of Harry Potter's world, than we thought. I think the idea of different classes of humans, different skill sets, different, are you a Hufflepuff or are you a Gryffindor type of thing? I think we're realizing that the differences aren't because we're all supposed to be Harry Potter. I think we're realizing that some of us, that the standard, that singular standard that they hold up for body type, that the singular standard they hold up for mind type or personality type or leadership type is bullshit. And so, go ahead.
No.
I could go for hours and just rant, but go ahead, Jen.
I was just probably going to rant too, but I think it's a product of coming out of that industrial age where we had this focus of let's produce factory workers who had to produce products, and so we all have to fit into this perfect little box physically, mentally, personality wise. And now that we're out of that and we have like the sky's the limit on all the things that we can do and see, all of a sudden we have to look at our old practices where, you know, brains are supposed to function this way. Well, who said that? Who said that we all have to think A, B, C? What if I think C, D, Q? It doesn't matter. Like, what's the product? What are we creating? What are we doing with that? That's the real. Are we a Model T sitting on the parking lot looking pretty, or are we driving around and doing great stuff?
So in this discussion, I guess maybe we could deconstruct the premise of AI. Like, are you saying, I haven't, I'm going to be honest here, and that's why I'm putting out the question. But I guess you have studied it, both of you guys have studied it more than I have probably. But the premise here is, and correct me if I'm wrong, the more mental processing power, or the more processing power period, the more you have, the closer you are to consciousness. Like, where are we drawing the line here for AI? Are we drawing it at consciousness as being self-aware? And are we getting to the point of saying that the machine is going to have so much processing power that it will be self-aware? And is that even a thing there, that the smarter you are, the more self-aware you are?
Here's I don't know, Matt, go ahead.
Do you know what the Turing test is, David, by chance?
I've heard of Turing machine.
Right. Okay, so the idea that if I were to interact with a machine but not know that I was interacting with a machine, like that machine would pass the Turing test, essentially. Like I would have.
And it's like a certain length of time or something, isn't it?
I'm
certain questions or
not
something
going
like
to
that.
pretend I know it that well.
Yeah.
But just the idea that.
So are you talking about as far as interacting as in like, hey, dude, what's up? Oh, not much. Just chilling. That kind of stuff?
Yeah, like a conversation, essentially.
Sure.
Okay.
I guess
That was just a question.
No, that'd be the first place. I mean, and then I think, seeing the interesting things they have been going with the game Go. Did you see the Netflix documentary on that? So watching that and watching Ex Machinima, which I think is also on Netflix. I could be wrong. I don't know where it's
at. Ex Machinima or Ex Machina?
Ex Machina.
There it is. I think it's the way David said it. Just exposing my ignorance here on this podcast, right?
In front of the millions of listeners we have.
The millions and millions.
Yes.
Someday. Yeah. I don't know where I was going anymore.
It's a Go documentary.
I'm going to go ahead and slice my arm up and see if I'm a machine, and I just failed.
No, but what about the Go documentary?
Yeah, what about
well, I think it's like they were just using massive amounts of processing power there. But they are also trying to figure out like how to, like, the pathways that they had to explore to figure out the best moves, and then the way they're intaking all the information to kind of give the intelligence something to study from. I don't know, the more I talk, the less I remember your question. Sorry.
Well, I'm like saying, to me, like, say for example, to me, getting a machine that can formulate strategy, say for example in chess, and formulate strategy and also formulate a reactive strategy. Say, you know, this dude does that with his pawn. Well, okay, these are the possibilities. I need to get to that from point A to point Z. Is it anything more than just a really complex algorithm?
Yeah, I think it's just it's just throwing crap against the wall and seeing what sticks the longest.
Whereas having the notion of I am something, I am alive, or I am this, and therefore I am reacting to you because I am part of this world. I don't know.
Yeah, there's not that.
Well, I guess I would
Are
defer.
we going to achieve that by just having more and more complex algorithms?
I see.
Right.
That's where
I would be super curious to hear what Austin has to say about it, because I think I might know who you were talking to. I'm not sure, but as far as like the differentiation between the different types of, not people would say artificial intelligence and mean one thing, but it could be just machine learning or general artificial intelligence, or there's a variety of different avenues to look at it.
Well, I think yeah, and you're absolutely right. So the general public is afraid of machine consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And there is real debate in the technology community whether that's even possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I would add, from a spiritual component, that until we understand our own, there's no freaking way we can give it to something else.
Right.
Right? Now, I do believe, this is, put on your tinfoil hats, people. I do believe that in the next 2,000 years,
Mm-hmm.
that once humanity, at the end of that time, steps into our place as the body of God, that we will then turn around and repeat the process that was done in us,
Mm-hmm.
and that we will give consciousness to minerals known as, silicate sand, right? The glass that's on your mobile phone, the gold that is on the chips that run your computers, like that literally minerals that we will give consciousness to machines. I think we are 2,000 years away from that. But I do think that is our destiny, because we are creators just like our Heavenly Father. Okay.
But Jesus is going to come back and I'm going to go party in heaven. So,
Well, did we not already do an episode on preterism?
I think we did.
At least we've touched on it like 100 times.
She was trying to get to
Has it released though? It's a real question.
binge our podcast. You will know what Jen is talking about.
There you go.
Shameless plug there.
Uh-huh.
You're welcome.
So I do believe in the end we will create artificial intelligence. I think we're very, very, very far away, because we don't understand our own consciousness. How on earth are we going to give it to something else?
Mm-hmm.
So now you're talking about what levels of intelligence are you talking about? If you're talking about consciousness, OMG, you're talking about creativity, you're talking about intuition, you're talking about emotion, and you're talking about, okay, so let me ask you, where do your thoughts come from? Like, do you really know where your thoughts originate?
It depends on the thought.
Yeah.
For sure.
I guess I'm confused. Can we go back for a second? Because we keep saying consciousness, like thoughts and emotions and stuff. Never mind. I'm not going to go there because I'm going to confuse people.
Awareness is part of it.
Hold on.
Big part of it.
What? Okay.
And all of a sudden, everybody's lost.
I want you to get to the other part.
Where
Yeah,
am I?
go ahead, Austin.
Yeah.
My thoughts come from depends on the thought. Where it comes from.
Okay. So you guys have done this exercise. I don't know if we've done it on this podcast, but it's a fun exercise to do if you want to get dizzy, and you actually want to do something. You do not do this while you're driving, but if you have time, close your eyes. You guys want to do this?
My eyes are closed.
All right, close your eyes.
Okay.
Now, silently to yourself, say, "My name is," and then fill in the blank with your name. So, my name is Austin.
My name is Dave. Oh, wait.
Silent.
In your head.
Silently to yourself in your head. Now, with your eyes continue to be closed, asked, who said that? Okay. Now, again, repeat silently to yourself your name. My name is so-and-so. And then ask, who's the one listening? And then say again, my name is Austin, or my name is so-and-so. So who said that? Who's listening? And who's the one observing this whole entire conversation? Then again, my name is so-and-so. Who said that? Who's listening? Who's observing? And who's observing the observer? So whenever I do that exercise for real, I get dizzy as crap. Right? Now, it's easy to do the exercise for fake, but if you do it for real and you genuinely, okay, who heard that? Who's saying it? Who's observing it? And then who's observing the observer? Oh my gosh. You realize your consciousness, one, you are not your mind. Two, you are a three-part being with a fourth part that actually resides above all of it. And I would argue that that's what all typologies throughout history, that you are body, soul, and spirit. And then at the core of that, your I amness is the center of it. Mm-hmm. That you're actually a four-part being, and really you're a three-part being with the I amness that centers all of it, or surrounds all of it. But until we understand that, how are we going to pass that on? And then on top of that, so I was talking with a couple friends of mine that are tech individuals, and they said, there is real debate in the community whether or not artificial intelligence is even impossible or even possible. And people who are saying it's going to happen in the next 10 years, the next 15 years, they're just talking about varying levels of computer capacity. But how do you explain the color blue to a blind person?
Mm-hmm. What were you going to say, Matt?
I was going to talk about the visible spectrum, and then I was like, that's...
Visualize the
see the visible spectrum. Well, nope.
Yep. So, now do that with everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So, we have to give over the power of observation and awareness and feeling and original thought and creativity. All of these things, we have to give that to minerals. I think we will. I think we're 2,000 years away from that. I was driving. One of this conversation was with a buddy of mine, Jason, and we're driving, and I'm realizing you can program a computer to look at everything going on the road, right? But true artificial intelligence would have the capacity to see the pedestrian walking on the side of the street and realize, oh, that's Bob from high school.
Yeah.
Right?
You just reminded me of something of really interesting.
Right, and care.
And I don't remember what documentary this was in. I apologize. But these guys, they made a machine crab. They're working on artificial intelligence, air quotes there. And, they didn't tell it anything. They just kind of gave it life and then didn't tell it what to do, just watched to see what happened. And it kind of squirmed for a while, and then it eventually figured out how to move. And then eventually once it learned to move, efficiently, they kind of broke one of its legs off. And then it struggled for a while, and then it learned to walk again, but with limping. And then I think they might have taken another leg off. I'm not sure. But then they were in a lab somewhere, and they saw a stream of data coming in, and they were like, what's that? What's that data even? Where's that coming from? What is that? And the camera on the device had learned to track faces. Ooh. They never told it to do that. I thought that was really interesting. But
sure.
See, I think what the distinction that Austin is making here is you have the difference between the machine knowing that it is something and having almost like a higher form of processing versus the machine just having the ability to process large amounts of data,
brute forcing,
and react to that without understanding that it is a being, I guess, right or not?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we're going to get there, and I think you're going to start seeing, major kind of oh, we could do this, and then you go, okay, that's great. Where's the emotions?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's the emotion. Where's the creativity? Oh, there's the creativity. Where's the intuition? Right. And then where's the spirituality? Where's the and consciousness is so much more vast than this scientific ones and zeros. And again, we're going to get there, and I do believe that we're going to do some amazing things just in the next 10 to 20 years that will put a lot of people. We did the whole the episode on jobs and the future of that and everything like that. And I do think AI, quote unquote, air quotes, will do amazingly beautiful things. But from true artificial consciousness, we don't, again, how can we pass on something we don't even understand?
So hold on here. The thing though is that you're saying the distinction is between artificial consciousness and artificial intelligence, and I think like the place where it gets kind of funky is where you get artificial intelligence that is autonomous and can react and has the ability to react.
Sure.
And so like to put this example out there, say we have a machine, we have a power plant that has we've reached artificial intelligence, and the command that we give it is keep this plant running. Mm-hmm. And it gets to the point where it can control, I don't know, let's say it has a weapon. I'm going really like out here, but it has weapons. It has a defense system or whatever. And so somebody, let's say we get to the place in technology where we don't need let's say this is an electrical plant. We don't need electricity anymore. We're going to shut the plant down. The plant will say, no, my command is to keep this plant running. Therefore it does that. Or say like a medical robot or whatever that has the abilities to make decisions for patients, and in their, I don't know. And so I think that's is that the AI that everybody is freaked out about? Intelligence that's autonomous, that is in a machine that has physical capability.
The thing with that though is that it still would be based on programmed information.
Right, but I mean, you just say it wouldn't have been the first poorly developed program in the history of humankind. You know what I mean?
I think at the end of the day, though, when you start messing with people's free choice and their free will, you mentioned an example of a medical robot making decisions for patients. Like when you take that choice away from me, then I feel unsafe and I feel insecure about this robot who's going to do an algorithm in their head and say, you know what, you're not worth working on, you're not worth saving, I'm going to end your life. So those are the things that drive fear. Like I don't have control and I need to have control.
But I don't know if I don't know if this is the artificial intelligence that we're talking about, because I mean the other thing that what's his name, I know Elon Musk has said something about this, but there was another guy that had been talking about nanotechnology and the ability to communicate with nanotechnology through your brain, and saying, well, you know, what if there's actually think this is another thing that I was studying today, and I think it's something that you had mentioned last week, Austin, about it was a Radiolab podcast, and it was talking about memories and what memories are. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I didn't listen to the podcast, but I had heard it years ago about them being basically like save files, and every time you open it, you don't just close the file, you actually have to hit save as every time. Yeah. But
they were talking about this lady that had first they had this drug that they gave people that could actually, like, if you were thinking of it, when you were building the memory, if you took this drug or you took a dose of this drug, it would completely disable the memory. Like it wouldn't. Apparently the process is building a protein, and it would inhibit it's an antibiotic. I don't know the chemistry of it, but it would inhibit the building of that protein. So you could disable the memory building system. And so they had used it to treat patients were thinking of using it to treat patients with PTSD. And it had actually helped this one lady that had been raped and so on and so forth. But anyways, and then they were also talking about this professor, I don't know, I think it was Stanford, but I'm not sure, that had that had tweaked, that had introduced a memory into these group of people. Like they were testing on these group of people, and they were trying to get these people to believe that they had been lost in a mall as a child by their parents. And so they introduced the various factoids and stuff into the conversation that they had with people, and also put some real stuff in there and use that. And they actually succeeded to implant a memory that did not occur into 1/4 of the people that they worked on.
Only a quarter?
Only?
Well,
it's a quarter!
No, but
Well, that's
25 people out of 100 but think that they got lost as a child in a mall when it never happened.
yeah, but I've heard a lot of
eyewitnesses are incredibly unreliable. I think Brain Games does a big.
It's amazing. But then think about it in the fact that if we get to the point where we can communicate with, let's say, our phone or with Google straight through nanotechnology, why would Google or why would this nanotechnology not be able to implant memories and stuff into our brain?
Inception.
How do we know this life isn't an implant of an inception?
Yeah.
Like there's a direct link in there. I don't know, but I just remember the podcast, the Joe Rogan Elon Musk podcast, and Musk saying that it was just an issue of bandwidth.
Yeah.
That right now we have to pick up the phone and do this Google search, whereas if you have a direct connection to your phone or to some sort of device, then you can access the information at a much higher speed, much higher bandwidth.
And that discussion goes into another thing that I have that would be a really long discussion, but I don't know.
Did we get to Austin's? He was really excited about his
the consciousness. We talked about consciousness.
Yeah, just the AI of how do you give consciousness to AI?
Yeah.
Nice.
I think it does come down to, are you talking about intelligence versus consciousness? I think most people, when they get into that fear reaction of artificial intelligence, they think artificial consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is that is a very, very long way off, if ever. Intelligences that would, be programmed to protect humanity, and then they interpret all of humanity's wars and realize that, they should then just kill us all off for our own good or whatever, the different movies or whatever. I think about it, like if you were really worried about artificial consciousness and you were worried about machines taking over and killing us all, then you would have to also think that they were that heartless.
They don't have hearts.
If they're conscious,
I think
then they would be aware of the pain. Humans are looking at animals, and there's a whole mess of us that realize that animals need to be treated more fairly. Do you think there's any machines that would see that?
It did kind of take a lot of humanity a while to get there, though. I feel like.
See, I think that's the problem, that to develop a machine that would not have the feeling part, that would just have the straight, cold, dark lines.
But it's logic. It's the logic piece, though. Like, it's not that they're cold and heartless, or they don't have those things right now. It's just those.
Well, I think that a proper metaphor is the idea of when we're paving a new road. Are we stopping because there's an anthill? No, we're paving.
Yeah. Right.
No, but at the same, sure, but you gotta understand, there are humans that would.
Yeah.
Right. And I gotta be, you guys are saying that it took a long time for human consciousness to figure out that animals should be treated fairly. Tell that to the Native Americans.
I'm saying the majority. Yeah.
But you're talking about Western culture, largely, which is only a small portion.
Yeah, killed the buffalo.
It's that kind of logic based the brain is the only thing that matters culture. But cultures that have been more in touch with the emotions, more in touch with the intuition, more in touch with creativity, have seen much larger concept. And so consciousness includes that. It includes diversity. So if we're worried about machines getting on one side and killing every human, then we're not really talking consciousness. We're talking about some version of artificial intelligence that has calculated, not felt it, not considered the other ramifications. They've just calculated. And then at that point, you're still not talking consciousness.
And I guess,
exactly,
in that respect,
yes.
we're not talking, we're basically implying that not all humans are particularly conscious either. Essentially.
Exactly.
I mean,
But I am. I mean, clearly I am the standard. So
there we go.
yeah.
everyone else is just wrong.
Well, I know we wanted to kind of talk about some things that people can that we found, at least, that have improved our lives, that maybe other people can pick up and integrate into theirs. I'll throw a simple one out there that anybody can pick up. Simply a red light bulb. I know this is a large shift from what we were just talking about, but at the time, I went ahead and picked up a red light bulb for our bathroom area, and it's turned out to be like the best $10 investment I can think of I've made in a long time. In the sense that oftentimes, maybe we're showering at night, or maybe I'm taking my contacts out at night, and I don't know if you guys are aware of how, or our listeners or viewers are aware of how much different levels of light impact your ability to fall asleep and have quality sleep. And maybe you fall asleep, but the light that you were exposed to impacts the quality of sleep that you have after you've fallen asleep. So having a red light that I can throw on in the bathroom at night, and I can, whether it's taking a shower, taking the contacts out, whatever it is, changing into PJs, helps me kind of, transition into that nighttime mode. The cool thing about it is that if you know how the eyes work, rods, cones, all that kind of business, it'll allow, like, you can turn the lights off in your bedroom, and if you're only having that red light bulb in the bathroom, cool thing about it is you'll be able to have your night vision when you roll out into the bedroom, so you're not going in blind.
I will say I do not recommend shaving with the red light on, because you will not do an accurate job. So
I was wondering how the rest of your family feels about the red light.
I actually enjoy the red light. It's a good. It does the mood thing, but it's not effective.
Yes, manscape with the light on.
And I think I'm just going to go on with my product that I would like to share with you all, and it goes to taking care of animals and making sure they're well fed or well stimulated while they're eating. We got one of those. It's a dog bowl that has different plastic shapes in it, so it's kind of like a maze while they're eating their food. It's pretty cool. It helps one of our dogs slow down so she doesn't eat all of the food in 2.5 seconds. But then it also it stimulates the brain, because they have to nose around and find it. It's like a little puzzle, like a hide and go seek, find the dog food. And so it's just something that I bought at the store, because this is cool. And then just as I'm watching them and thinking about how it actually stimulates them and it helps their living their best life.
That's really interesting.
That's what I decided.
I'm curious to look this up and see what it looks like.
Yeah, it's on Amazon, and I'm sure we're going to link it in our.
Of course we are.
Awesome.
I don't know. For me, it's very. I actually have it right here.
Nice.
Put it in the camera.
Oh,
right.
Book. Your book.
The 4 agreements. I am personally. I am very much on a journey of understanding consciousness and the mind. In some ways, I've been on that my whole life. Anybody who knows me, I am a devourer of spiritual information, and I've recently, in the last few years, come across the idea of mental science, which that Thomas Troward introduced me to that. But my latest foray into that concept is Miguel Ruiz and the 4 agreements, and then, to be honest, his entire library of books. I think they should probably not just be a link in the podcast, but should offer all of his books in our store. The 4 agreements, the 5th agreement, the voice of knowledge, the mastery of love, the 3 questions, 5 levels of attachment, mastery of life, and so on and so forth. Because, and he does say it, and he says it, I think it's even on his Oprah interview. He says, the most sciences are so far advanced compared to psychology, and that he says this is the advancement of the science of psychology. In other words, mental science. And for me, it has changed my life. And it is one of those books that you can read on multiple levels. It's actually pretty popular in the business world because the 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. You can imagine that those 4 agreements in the business world would be like, yeah, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to not make assumptions. I'm going to be impeccable with my word and, don't take anything personally. Sure. Or you could go on the level that I know the author actually means it, which is a whole nother level that if you really lived that way, you would find yourself rising above the hell of most people's experience of living, and you would enter into what I would dare say the kingdom of heaven that Jesus says is within you. So yeah, I I pretty much only have one product I recommend right now. It is, the 4 agreements and or any of the accompanying books. I would also add as a kind of a caveat would be the Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I wasn't ready for that book before because, to be honest, his presentation is a bit more esoteric. But the 4 agreements and all that was perfect for where I was. And then by the time I got to the Power of Now just recently, it was kind of that cherry on top of like, oh yeah, here's all the same information in a different package. So pick your adventure, but 4 agreements or the Power of Now, both of those center around the same concept that I cannot recommend highly enough.
So you recommended Thomas Troward. I've got his where would you recommend?
What are you doing? You can have this.
Where would you recommend reading him, or would you recommend reading him?
Yeah, I mean he's my favorite. Miguel Ruiz has given him a run for his money, but honestly, I mean Thomas Troward's my man.
Right.
Like I'm pretty sure I believe in past lives at this point, and I'm pretty sure that was me. So I'm just kidding. My favorite of his is by far The Creative Process in the Individual. It is highly different than the 4 agreements. It is an entirely different concept. The creative process in the individual is a significantly more in-depth and I dare say intelligent foyer into the law of attraction. And so if you like The Secret and you want to go deeper and you're like, well, The Secret was great, but I feel like they left a lot out. They did. You should go check out the Creative Process by Thomas Troward. And
disclaimer on Thomas Troward, at least I feel like for most people, the first time you try to read it, it's like, what the heck? How? It's just so laborious right initially, but if you keep going and you don't try so hard to figure everything out, like right when you're reading it, at least for me and for my aunt also who read it, it was a lot easier, and then all of a sudden you're just kind of like in the world and you get it a lot better. So
that's an interesting strategy. I know me personally, when I was reading it, like I can't keep going. I have to like stop and understand what I'm reading. So I was like, each sentence is like a paragraph.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's a lot easier to get into it, and then you start to grasp things a lot faster. I feel like, I don't know.
Well, he wrote it back in the day when I mean, think about it. That was the primary form. That was really the only form of communication.
What time frame was he alive? And
in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So if you realize, like today, we're so used to video, and we're used to and audio, and written information for us is kind of like, I guess I'll read a blog as long as it's not more than 700 words, right? Few of us read books anymore, and especially if we do, it's still just kind of a hobby versus it being our way of gaining information. So you can think about it, his audience was used to super dense presentations. And if it was rewritten, if Creative Process was written today, I would guess that Creative Process is under 100 pages. But if it was rewritten, it'd probably be 600 or 700 pages.
What are you waiting for?
He's probably not waiting.
I'm working on it.
He has too many things at once.
I'm waiting on Spirit, if you must know.
Yeah.
Why are we whispering?
So the products that came to mind for me were just like random things we've used recently, nothing very intelligent at all. One thing that David and I both used recently was a foot mask or like a foot peel thing, which I found intensely interesting. Well, interesting, not the right word. Satisfying to get all that stuff off your face is nice. It didn't work as well for David because he had a lot more.
3 of them.
You can do a couple like consecutively or whatever. But
was it an actual mask
really
or
nice.
was it like a concoction that you?
Okay, so it wasn't. It was more like a.
Yeah, it was.
Did it have
I don't
like
know, it was
Listerine
something
in it?
You stick your feet in it in these funny little booties, and then it's like for an hour, and then you rinse them off, and then it takes a while. It's like several days later that your feet start peeling, but man, that'll take up some time if you like peeling things.
I mean, that's probably better than like hand, foot, and mouth disease.
That's not how you get hand, foot, and mouth.
I'm just saying, like, that was intensely satisfying pulling all that skin off my feet.
Oh god.
Oh, okay.
Anyways,
Yeah. Similar to a sunburn, but like without any pain whatsoever. So, and then the other thing I thought of, because you don't have a product.
No, I know.
Wait, before you go on, can you
Yes.
explain why you would do that?
Oh, if your feet. Well, I was just curious about it, honestly. Like my feet aren't really particularly rough, but like some places, you
Is
know,
it like a pedicure? Like you do
Like
like
People that don't wear shoes,
I don't wear shoes
get
really at all.
thick. Their skin dries off and it gets really thick.
It just creates calluses, similar
And
to
it
how like
creates
when you
lots of
play
calluses
guitar,
and
it
stuff
makes
like that.
calluses on
And
your fingers or whatever.
They crack and they get really dry and stuff.
And depending
Okay.
on what climate you're in, it's definitely a lot worse.
Yeah.
Anyway, David has cracked heels.
Yeah, because
I think my mom does,
I hardly
like-
ever wear shoes.
Oh, the other product that I thought of that we just recently started using was reusable grocery bags and produce bags, which obviously it's not like anything new, but the design of the bags is a little bit more new, I would think. And they work really well. They're really good material, very lightweight, very durable and stuff. And then the produce bags. And there's so many of them on Amazon that it's really a huge pain to decide what you're going to get. So just get the ones that we got because they're good.
You made the decision.
Yeah.
It's instead of like the produce bags are instead of the little annoying bags that you get at Walmart when you're getting produce.
The little
that you
tiny
can't separate
plastic.
and you can't open.
Yeah.
You just take your own little bag and then that way you don't have to mess with the.
They're handy.
I hate those bags.
Yes, they're annoying.
Yep.
And think of the trees.
The trees, the planet.
The trees. I thought you said the trades.
Yeah.
Right, me too.
Okay.
Well, is there anything else?
good.
Anything else?
We're good.
All right. Well, abruptly, thank you for listening to this week's dose of mental foreplay, the Epoch Podcast. All sorts of weird orders there.
There aren't going to be separate blog posts, I don't believe, for this episode, but
Correct.
there is going to be one big, long blog post with a lot of stuff in it because
Cool.
we talked about a lot of different
Yeah.
things.
We did.
and links to the stuff that we've
Yeah.
mentioned here too.
I think I mentioned like 50 books.
Yeah.
I just put all the books
All the books.
on my notes.
Austin's
as I
Book
take
Club will
them.
be on there too.
If you guys want us to talk about something, hit us up on the social medias, by the way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to try to do this on a monthly basis. So that'd be an opportunity to inject that idea into our consciousness, and then we can have that conversation. Sounds
Woohoo.
good.
Yes. It was fun. I had fun today. It was a good,
Yeah,
good
That's
chat.
good.
If I had to talk to somebody, I'd talk to you guys. So it's all right.
Aw.
All right. Love you guys. And thanks everyone for listening, watching the Epoch Podcast, your weekly dose of mental foreplay.
Bye.
Bye.
Orange Man bad.